Hello, my friends. John LaRuffa here with another episode of Solo and Sold It. This is going to be episode number 2. And today we are going to be talking about games that I had in my collection, 5 of them. And for whatever reason, I decided to sell them. And I'll talk to you about why and the games that we're going over. And we'll see, what you think about it from your perspective. Because again, as I like to say in this channel and also on these episodes, these are not necessarily bad games. They just didn't resonate for me. Now, maybe I do trip over a bad game once in a while, but in this case, I try to be, as respectful as I can about how I talk about these things. So the first one in no particular order is going to be number 1, By Stealth and Sea. By Stealth and Sea is a DVG game, and I have mostly a kind of a negative relationship with DVG. Not because they're bad games, but they're just clearly not games for me. And that's all there is to it. Every time I look at one, I think, okay, this could be cool. I could like this. And then when I get to playing it, when I do the execution of the actual game itself, it falls flat for me. I just don't find it all that interesting. And By Stealth and Sea was the same kind of thing. You have these different actions you could take. You're trying to get these makeshift submarines to attack and destroy different targets. And just overall, there's some dice rolling, which I don't mind, but overall, it just did not really appeal to me. I played it twice, and the first time was kind of blah. The second time I was like, no way. I can't see myself continuing to play this game. I know a lot of people like that game. A lot of people like DVG games. But I've had just a rocky relationship with those types of games. Again, I don't think they're bad. I just don't think they resonate with me. So By Stealth and Sea, no dice. All right, number 2. It's a second edition of a game that I actually got, this second edition, way back a long time ago at Essen. And it is called Atlantis Rising. So Atlantis Rising, second edition, had a lot of the trappings that I would like in a solo game, basically like a survival game, and the water is kind of coming up and you got things that are happening and you got to get your resources and do these conditions in order for you to win the game before it's too late, before the whole island, floods, right? But the problem I had with solo is that you were like swapping in and out different roles, and that you would think would be okay, but I found it kind of distracting almost. There were so many different roles and so many different kinds of things I could do, and you're gathering resources here and trying to deal with building little upgrades there, and I just did not find it worth all the effort. There are games that give me a similar feel of, the things are closing in on me, and I don't mind playing, multi-handed, and that would be games like The Loop or Pandemic, for instance, or any variant of Pandemic, to be honest. I've had played a lot of good ones. But for whatever reason, I could not get behind the feel of Atlantis Rising. And I didn't find the upgrades all that exciting. I didn't find the special abilities all exciting. And it seemed like a lot of stuff. Plus, it was really fiddly. It took a long time to set up. So after a while of holding on to that game for years, I realized that I enjoyed it more as a multiplayer, not as a solo. And since I don't play a lot of games multiplayer anymore, it had to go. So there's that one. All right, number 3. Number 3 was a game that had all the trappings of a game that I thought I would love. And in fact, I held on to this game for a very long time, playing it, once every now and then, and really trying to see, what am I missing here? I even sorted it out and tried to improve the way I stored the components so I could set it up really fast and play it. And ultimately, that game just did not cut the mustard for me, and it was The Colonists. The Colonists, with its production chains and with its, Euro-style artwork and with its area movement and with, this going to that, going to this, going to that, it had everything I thought I would love. And yet, I don't know if it was either too long or too samey almost. Even though you had multiple guilds you could work in and there was other things to do, I could never get past the idea that I wanted it to be done before it was. And I'd always played over several sessions and kind of set it up and play a little bit and stop and set up and play a little bit because I just kind of get sick of it. And so it was one of those games that fell flat. I eventually sold it. And I tried to love that game because I thought, here's a game that I really should like. It definitely should be one of those things that, makes me happy. And yet I just didn't find it so. And the other thing about it was the components were really good. The artwork was good. There was tons of tons of components, right? It had everything I thought it was going to have. And yet over the course of a couple of years, I could never get it to spark with me and just get me all that excited. All right, another one, number 4. Number 4 was one that I liked playing with my kids a little bit, but when it was time to solo, it just didn't work. Just didn't like it. I shouldn't say it didn't work. It was fine. I just didn't like it because I like other games of that genre better, and the genre is the polynomial placement and this and that was Isle of Cats. So I liked a couple plays I played with Isle of Cats when I was playing with my kids. But as a solo game, I just didn't find it all that compelling. And it seemed like it overstayed its welcome and that the decisions weren't all that interesting, I guess. It was kind of straightforward, so to speak. It was very tactical. The strategy just didn't seem like it was there for me as far as I could try this versus that versus this. And I just don't think it translated really all that well into a solo game. There was more fun with a multiplayer game. So ultimately, I ended up parting with it. And it was just one of those things where it was kind of like, it was a forgettable experience. It did not bring me back to the table. I never came, home from work like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to set up Isle of Cats. So that wasn't for me either. All right. Number 5, and my controversial one, a game that so many people love. They love the narrative. They love the experience. They love the whole thing, the whole desperate situation and all that stuff. And I tried, but I just did not find after multiple plays that the game felt worth the effort and worth the ultimate crushing of your experience. And that was This War of Mine. I found This War of Mine, I could get to maybe a third or fourth round and I would always end up dying. People would end up being sick and despairing and, all that stuff. I could never seem to get ahead in that game. And overall, I found it was really repetitive in what you were doing. I didn't think that any of the actions were all that much fun. After a little while, the story and the stuff kind of wore off a little bit. And actually, I really enjoyed the electronic version. To be honest, I had it on the iOS and I enjoyed it. So I thought This War of Mine was going to be, a better experience. And I kept it for a while and I kept trying it and I would fail and then I put it away and then I would learn it again. And also that game had the worst rule book idea ever. I'm sorry, I hated it. And I'm going to say it that way. I apologize for being so rough, but just tell me the rules. Don't say, this on this page you get this rule, and this page you get that rule. It was very difficult to look up what you were doing. And for a game that had a lot of rule nuances and such, I did not like that. I liked the game that eventually came out much later, Frostpunk by 11-Bit Studios, much more. That rule book was solid. It was clear. You could find stuff in it. You knew exactly what was going on. And in a lot of ways, that game has a similar feel from a theme standpoint, kind of desperate, but just to me, a much, much better game. I even tried to buy one of the expansions in order to try to pep it up. And I tried some of the expansion content of This War of Mine. And again, after that, I realized this was not for me. It was a mistake, and I went and I sold it. And I know a lot of people love that game, but the gameplay just isn't interesting enough for me to do the same thing over and over. The same, opening up the house, the same trying to make improvements, the same gathering enough food so that I don't die immediately, and fighting off diseases, and, hoping for better draws and all that stuff. Just, no, not for me. So those are my top 5. Well, not top 5, pardon me. Those are my episode 5 for episode 2. I know, again, a lot of people will like some of these games, and that's okay. That's all right. They're good games. Every one of these games is a good game for the right type of player. I just wasn't one of them. So thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. Whatever you decide to play in the future, I hope you have a fantastic time doing it. Take it easy, everybody.